Hi, I'm Howard Tiersky, the author of the book Winning Digital Customers, which I believe you are in the middle of reading, or perhaps have finished reading, because this video is a supplement to the book where we're going to talk a little bit more about customer data, and in particular, some of the most important types of customer data. In the book, of course, we talk a fair amount about data, and we talk about the fact that there's kind of two main types of data that we deal with in most digital experiences. One is customer data, and one is product data. And of course, one of the most important things we can do with AI or algorithms is to create product recommendations for a customer, and that's at the intersection of customer data, what we know about the customer, and product data, so we can recommend the right product for the right customer at the right moment in time. In any case, this video is diving a little bit more into customer data, and in the book we talk about that there are three main types of customer data. The first type we talk about in the book is intrinsic data, and just as a quick reminder, intrinsic data is information about me as a customer that is relatively unchanging. This might be things like my name, my gender, if I'm married, my address, and of course you can see these are things that can change. I can move or get a sex change operation or whatnot, but they're not the kind of thing that change on a regular basis, and that's intrinsic data. The second category is temporal data. Temporal data is data about this moment, like where am I right now? What device am I using right now? What am I trying to accomplish right now? Is it raining where I am right now? These would all be examples of temporal data. Temporal data is of the moment, and it's essentially out of date an hour later, or sometimes even seconds later. But that's temporal data. It's information about the customer right now. And the third type is interaction history. Interaction history is what are all the things that have occurred in the past that would be useful to know about that customer's interaction with your company, with your brand. And that might be things like past purchases, past visits to the website, or apps. Have I downloaded the app in the past, reviewed anything in the past, anything that I've done in the past interacting with the brand or its digital properties or non-digital properties would be considered interaction history. So those are our three main types of customer data. And what's the whole point of trying to even define things in categories and types like that? It's just mostly so we can drill into each of them and say, all right, within each of those areas, what is it we really need? What's the most important types of information for us to focus on getting and then utilize? And some of this data you may have but not be using. In other cases, you may not even have it, and you need a strategy to get it and then use it. So what I just want to do for a couple minutes is just drill in a little bit more into some of the most important types of intrinsic data. So what I want to do is drill into some of the most important types of customer data. So let's start with intrinsic data. Well, what's the most important thing to know about a customer? Well, the first thing I would have to say is, and this is true across all these categories, is it depends. It depends on your business. We often do customer segmentation, customers' personas, looking to answer this very question for companies. What is most important for them to know about their customer? What is most actionable? And there are some things that are very, very commonly helpful to know, but there are many things that are unique to a given situation, a given type of product. But to start with, one of the most valuable things to know about your customer is how you can reach them, how you can contact them, which usually means their email address, but it could mean other things like their Twitter handle or connecting to them on Facebook so you can message them. But essentially, having the information that you need and the permission as well so that you can reach back out to them. Because so often we have people who come to digital properties, they come and they go, and if we have no idea who they were and we have no way to get back to them, then that's a real missed opportunity. So I would say, if I had to sort of force rank and say what's the most important, it's probably the email address. And of course, it's very helpful to have the person's name as well, so you can address them directly if you're reaching out to them. And obviously, there are other types of contact information as well. A physical address would be another example. In kind of the old world, that was what we were mostly focused on, is getting people's physical addresses so we could send them direct mail. Probably more useful these days to have an email, but of course, having both also useful. I think most important types of intrinsic data really do vary, and I'll give you some examples. We've worked in the energy industry, marketing and creating transactional tools for consumer residential electricity and energy customers. And for example, understanding how a home was heated, whether your home was heated by oil or gas, was very, very important to understand, and would very significantly change the way we would market to you. We worked with theme parks, trying to market and create commerce experiences for people to buy tickets and things to theme parks, and very, very helpful in understanding how to more effectively communicate with the customers, understanding the family composition. If a family has small children, for example, you can do a much better job by giving them information and even showing them imagery, which is, showing small children having a great time at an amusement park. Whereas if a family has, say, teenagers, you can make a big mistake by marketing to them with a picture of some toddlers shaking the hand of a big furry character, causing the person making the decision to think that your theme park is too babyish for their teenage kids. And of course, you can make the opposite mistake, right? You can show kids screaming on roller coasters and have them think, oh my God, my kids are only 2 and 3 years old. They'd be terrified by that. And of course, many theme parks have both. And to most effectively market to somebody as a family, it's helpful to know, again, what's the composition of that family. Other examples, it can be so varied, right? Whether your counters are granite or formica, or what are the birthdays of your loved ones. Someone like 1-800-Flowers remembers the birthdays and other important anniversaries and such, so that it reminds me to send flowers, etc. So I would say in the area of intrinsic data, beyond the basics, what you really need is a process to figure out within your business, what are the most actionable pieces of data? And usually it's only 5 to 7. Of course, there's many more that would be good to have. But there's usually 5 to 7 core pieces of intrinsic data that are the most actionable. If I'm selling theme park tickets, knowing your shoe size just isn't all that helpful. If I'm trying to sell you, if I'm Zappos though, your shoe size could be hugely helpful, because like if I start to send emails out with ads for shoes that are on sale and you click on 2 or 3 of those shoes and we don't have them in your size, well, that's a wasted opportunity. I should only be showing you the shoes in an email that I send you, or even on the homepage where I'm promoting what's on sale, I should be showing you only the things that I have in your size, right? That's going to be a much better experience. So it could be very, very important in that case. So doing the right work to figure out within your customer experience and within your business and your industry, what are the things that are going to be most valuable? Very, very important to do. And so how do you get this intrinsic data? Well, I think there's really 3 ways, and I'm going to talk about 2 right now, and I'm going to save one for a little later in the video. One is you just ask, right? Just ask. But that's tricky, right? Because most people don't want to fill out long forms answering 100 questions. Many people don't want to answer even 1 question. And as information seems personal or private, very often people are hesitant to provide it. But they will provide it if it's a part of something that they want. So if you say to somebody, for example, on my shoe website, would you like to search for shoes but only be shown shoes that we have in stock in your size? Now all of a sudden, I'm perfectly willing to tell you my shoe size, which is a 12, by the way. And in case you want to, send me some shoes. Sometimes an 11.5 though. If they run large, an 11.5, but otherwise probably 12. Anyway, so now I've totally forgot what I was saying. I'm thinking about all the shoes you guys are going to send me. No, I don't need any more shoes. So in a situation like that, you can very often get people to willingly give you information. And what's great then is if you've also got them to have identified themselves, let's say given you their email address, perhaps you've offered them coupons or free information or some other benefit to sign up and give you an email address, and then later they're on another tool and they tell you their shoe size. Now you're starting to piece things together, right? Now you're starting to take an individual identity and now you've got a shoe size attached to it. And perhaps the next time you're going to get some other information that's helpful to you, like where they live. Because, if someone lives in Florida, you're probably not going to sell them boots in the winter, most likely. You might be able to sell them sandals. But if someone lives in Chicago, you can sell them sandals in the summer, but probably not sell them sandals in the winter unless they're going on vacation. So these are the types of bits of data that can be very, very helpful in terms of creating a more effective digital experience. So, and of course, the other way to get intrinsic data is to append it. And usually that has to start with getting some basic personal information, like a person's email address. But then there are third-party data providers that keep databases that connect people's email addresses and their names and their addresses to other pieces of data about them. So it's not 100% reliable, but if you get someone to give you a little bit of information about them and you're willing to spend a little money, like it might be $1 or something, or a couple dollars per person, there are services that will allow you to pull in additional fields of data. For example, if I wanted to know whether you own your own home or you rent, and I got your email address, I could then use a third-party service to give me a reasonably likely accurate answer, not 100% accurate, of whether you own or rent your own home, without having to ask you if you own or rent your own home. And then if I'm trying to communicate with you or market to you, I could tailor my message with a reasonable degree of certainty. One other method is to create browsing paths, and we'll actually talk about that in a minute when we talk about interaction history. But for example, I've seen websites and I've built websites and mobile apps where the first thing it does is it just says to you, are you a physician or a patient? Very first question you have to answer, right? You go right into an experience identifying, are you an enterprise or a small business? Just first question, and you make it clear when someone comes to that experience that that button is there because obviously you've got different information for them. You're going to show them something different. You're going to tell them a different story. You know, if you go to the Dell website and search for computers, one of the things that it says is, are you looking for a computer for your home or for your small business or for your large business? Now, I don't know if all those computers are different, but I'm guessing certain products are probably applicable to any of those. But they love it if you go into the section for small business or large business because now they've got a little bit more information about you and they can use that in a variety of ways to hopefully give you a better experience and also more effectively market themselves. So those are some techniques for getting the kind of intrinsic data that you want to need about each individual customer once you've figured out what it is. So let's talk about temporal data. Temporal data is data that's of the moment. There's one type of temporal data that is more important than any other piece of temporal data. And it's the one that has made Google all their money. And it is, what does this person need right now? What are they looking for right now? I'm looking for batteries for a Mr. Roboto talking toy, or I'm trying to find out whether there's any problem taking vitamin C tablets when you're also taking erythromycin antibiotics or whatever, right? There's some very specific problem, issue, concern, thing I'm trying to answer right now. And tomorrow I'm probably going to have a totally different need. But what is it that I want right now? And of course, what Google does is they're able to make an enormous amount of money because they've created a tool where the number one thing you do is you go type in what it is you want. And once they know that, they can essentially resell that information to other people. Say, hey, are you looking to reach people who want this right now? You can buy some ad space on our website. But of course, you can do some of these same types of things yourself to figure out when someone comes to your digital property, they're there for some reason. And so one of the things you want to be thinking about in engineering that experience is, how do I make it as easy as possible for that person to tell me what it is that they want, what they're looking for? It could be through a search tool. It could be through conversational commerce. There's a lot of different ways. And by the way, sometimes people come to your digital experience with metadata attached to them that already should tell you what is the problem they're trying to solve right now. For example, I mentioned Google earlier. If you have an ad on Google, if you're running ads on Google, you're probably running many ads, right? For different keywords and marketing different things. And so if somebody clicks on one of those ads, when that person comes to your site, first of all, they're being sent to a particular page that you've said that that ad should go to. And second of all, that link is passing data to you as a digital property, which you can choose to ignore, or you can do something with, like add it to the customer's profile, even if you don't know who the customer is yet. But if someone's clicked on a link about bedwetting, well, now you know, right? And if you're WebMD, there's a lot of questions that someone could have, but they're clicking into your experience knowing that that's what they searched for. And you want to be mindful of the fact that that's the problem I'm trying to solve for somebody. So either finding ways on a digital property to make it easy for someone to tell you, because most likely they want you to know the number one thing that they're there for. But some sites it's not easy, right? Some apps it's not easy. You go in there and you're tapping around and choosing different menu items or navigation items. So think about that. I can't tell you the answer in your particular situation, but how do you make it as simple and easy as possible for the customer to make sure that your tool, your system knows what they're trying to solve for? That is the number one most important piece of temporal data. Another one that's quite helpful and useful in many cases is location. And whether you're in an app or on a website, you can get that location data. You may have the operating system have to prompt that person's permission, but you can generally get that location information, and that's useful for a wide range of things, but certainly whether it's locating a store or telling someone whether something can be shipped to their address, or letting them know whether your restaurant delivers to their area, or targeting, personalizing the products that you show. For example, if you're an apparel site, you may want to show different seasonal products based on what region of the country and what climate is happening right now in that part of the country. And by the way, that raises another topic, which is time of year and date, time of day. That's more temporal data. And obviously that's easy for you to know, right? You know what time it is. And when you know where someone is, you know what time it is where they are. Because sometimes people are doing different things at midnight than they are in the middle of the workday. And you may be able to use that information in the experience that you provide to somebody. And certainly, like I said, seasonality, if you know the time of year, and then you are able to connect that with weather data, easily obtainable, that tells you what the weather pattern is where they are. If it's apparel, you're probably talking about seasonality. But for certain products or certain services, it may be of the moment. You may want to know that it's raining right now where that person is. For example, if you're a taxi service, that could affect perhaps your pricing model. Who knows? So again, there are data sources that you can say, hey, once I know where someone is, I can find out what kind of weather they're experiencing there. And maybe that's irrelevant to your product, just like knowing whether someone has kids is pretty irrelevant to installing a furnace, but knowing whether they have gas or oil is very important. Similarly, for you, knowing whether it's raining may not be important, but it may be. So again, we want to talk about what some of the most important types of data are. Obviously, we're going to bend on your situation. A key part of the customer research you need to do is to figure out which are the pieces of information which are most important to being able to serve that customer in the most hyper-convenient and most proactively personalized way. And I just want to add one more type of temporal data that is not widely used today, but my own personal prediction, if I was going to put on my, what's that hat that Johnny Carson used to wear, my Swami hat, and predict the future, it would be sentiment analysis. There's a lot of cool technologies that now use everything from how you type to how you move the mouse to how hard you tap the screen to all kinds of information like that to try to determine what your emotional state is. Are you happy? Are you frustrated? Are you sad? Are you discouraged? Are you excited? Are you enthusiastic? And based on that, well, we can change the experience in different ways. Show you more information, show you less information, maybe even change the pricing of something based on how likely we think you are to buy based on your emotional state. There's all kinds of interesting things that we could do once we can get reliable sentiment analysis, reliably know your emotions. So I'm talking about the future a little bit here, but it's not too far in the future. So no harm in starting to think if you're doing your future state journey mapping, for example, as we're going to talk about later in the chapter that this video relates to. Hey, imagine a few years from now where we could more reliably know what someone's feeling. How would that help us create a better and more effective experience? So just something to think about for the future. All right, and let's round the bend to the third category, which is interaction history. So, usually actual transactions is the most important and most valuable interaction history. If someone has purchased from you in the past, then they're a customer, right? Versus just a prospect or a visitor. So you probably want to treat them with extra care and love if they're someone who's actually given you that trust and given you their money and all that. And furthermore, you want to know what did they buy, because that could very well influence what they're looking to buy today. Of course, again, it depends on your type of business. A friend of mine Tom Goodwin wrote a great book called Digital Darwinism, and he jokingly says that he'll go online and buy himself a tape measure. And for the next 2 weeks, every site he goes to is trying to sell him tape measures as if he's trying to start a collection. So just because someone bought a tape measure yesterday probably doesn't mean they want to buy a tape measure today. Like, how many tape measures do you need? But certainly might indicate certain possible interests. And so that might suggest certain products you could possibly cross-sell. And obviously some products have consumables. If you bought a printer a month ago, might you want some toner? That seems more likely than that you'd want to buy every single day another tape measure. So knowing that information can be very, very helpful. And also, if you have data on their satisfaction, you want to make sure that you've paid attention to, did that person buy a product and write a review on your website? If it was dissatisfied, it might lead you to want to do something different with that purchase history than if they were super happy and satisfied. And sort of taking a step down from purchases, you might want to look at other kinds of interactions. For example, products that you may have looked at but not purchased, especially products you may have put in the shopping cart and not purchased. And of course, not every business has a shopping cart or is that kind of commerce, but if it's a financial services site, what are insurance products that you began a application process for and didn't complete? Or what are even just products that you've read a lot of information about, or you downloaded the product data sheet, or you used a tool to estimate the size or get a pricing estimate, anything like that suggests real interest and intent. And again, that's information that could be very, very helpful, both in more effectively selling, but also in terms of, again, hyper-personalizing what is the experience you give that person when they come back to you or even engage with you on another channel. We've had great success, for example, with some email marketing where we worked for one company that sells commercial lighting and installs large commercial lighting installations. And we would send out a variety of emails on different topics related to commercial lighting. Things like how to make your lighting in your store make people buy more, how to make flattering lighting to make your products look better, or lighting or articles about how you can improve security in your store through better illumination, right? Those are pretty different topics. Or how you can reduce your energy consumption and therefore your costs by changing your lighting fixtures and therefore using less electricity. So those are some pretty different topics. And what we would do is we would track, based on the subject lines, which customers opened which emails. And if you never opened emails about saving money, but you opened the emails about making more flattering, effective lighting so that your customer experience in your store was better and your products look better and you could increase sales, well, then we sort of stopped sending you emails about energy savings because we just concluded it's just not that important to you. Maybe you're a high-end jewelry store, you're only an 800 square foot store, and you just don't use that much electricity. But if you can sell one more $5,000 diamond necklace, that's going to pay your energy bill for the whole year. So you're just really not focused on lowering your electricity bill by $20. You're super focused on making your products look better. And whereas somebody else might run a 100,000 foot facility and they're really super interested in saving money. So over time, by figuring out based on which emails were open, we were able to take that data and algorithmically send you more of the types of emails that you're interested in and stop sending you the types of emails that you're less likely to be interested in. So, and how do you get that data? Well, that's some of the easiest data to get, right? Because every time the customer does something, you gather data every time. As long as you're collecting that data and storing it somewhere, every time someone opens one of your emails, if you're using any kind of a commercial email sending package, you should be getting that data. You should know who's opened your emails, who's clicked on the emails, who's coming to your website, what pages are they looking at. You know, there's many, many technologies that will help you track all these things, certainly what purchases people have made. So then it just becomes a question of saying, well, this is data we already have. The challenge is sometimes it's in different places, right? You have one place that's tracking your, storing your email data, another place that's storing your transactions and all that. So making sure that all that's brought together in a way that allows you to use it to drive the intelligence of what kind of experience you get the customer, that can be the hard part. But the good news is it's not like some of these other categories where, gosh, we would love to know whether you have oil or gas heat, but like we don't know that. How would we find that out? And lastly, you might remember when we talked about implicit data, I said there was a third way of gathering implicit data. One way was to ask. A second way was to append it, right, to buy it, basically. And then I said there was a third way. And the third way is implicit profiling. And implicit profiling is essentially a way of using interaction history to drive knowledge of either implicit characteristics or temporal characteristics. So I actually already gave you an example of this. What I talked about with the email with our commercial lighting company was implicit profiling. Meaning, what we really wanted to know was what your interests were. What was most important to you about lighting? We could have asked that. We could have had sign up on our website, and one of our questions is, what's most important to you? But, you know, very few people would probably fill that out. But by observing over time in the interaction history, which emails you opened, we were able to fill a separate field in called, at least our best guess, what aspects of lighting were most relevant to you. Was it safety? Was it maintenance cost? Was it electricity usage? Was it the flattering qualities of the lighting, etc.? And on that basis, then be able to do a good job. So we weren't really interested in knowing which emails you opened, really. We were interested in knowing what your interests were. So we were able to implicitly figure that out from the other information. And similarly, I'll give you another example. I mentioned earlier the value of knowing whether what the family composition is for somebody who's going to a theme park. So one of the things we did with one of our theme park customers is we simply put little tags on a lot of the different informational pages. And there were pages on the website on things like babysitting, or stroller rental, when the character breakfasts were, various aspects of a theme park, even the ride heights, like how tall you needed to be to ride the different. I mean, if you're going with a group of adults to a theme park, you're probably not looking up information on how tall you need to be to ride the roller coaster, right? I mean, you're plenty tall. So, and even if you just looked at one of those pages, we didn't necessarily draw a conclusion, but if you looked at 3 or more of those pages, we said, okay, you probably have kids. And based on which pages, we had even segmented you into having like mostly younger kids or mostly older kids. And so on that basis then, when you got an email marketing a discount on the ticket price, the picture that accompanied it might vary in terms of the composition of the family that was shown in the image based on pages you'd clicked on the website. And of course, the consumer was never aware of this, even if they became aware of it. I don't think it was particularly scary. But anyway, so there's just some examples of how we use interaction history, in this case, which pages of a website you looked at, to help us figure out something which is more of a implicit characteristic, which is what's the composition of your family. Okay, so we've talked about implicit data, we've talked about temporal data and interaction history, and how interaction history can actually be used to help fill in sometimes temporal and implicit data. That's a little more information than we had in the book for you about customer data. Hopefully that was useful to you, and I really, really hope that you enjoy the rest of the book. Thanks for watching, and thanks for reading.